With this posting, we begin the second half of Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, Part 1. We'll retrace the chromatic journey in Part 2 with different preludes and fugues, but that's still a few weeks in the future. I believe I probably already tipped my hand, but in the interest of full disclosure, I came to this project seeking food for my hungry soul, and I want to share a few thoughts about that. The Well-Tempered Clavier is a celebrated achievement, by reputation one of the pinnacles of the great polyphonic outpouring of the first half of the 18th century. Yet I'd never studied it closely before just now, because I'm not a pianist and never was, and when I was an oboist, the Well-Tempered Clavier wasn't relevant to what I was doing musically. It's one of the odd paradoxes of my life that I didn't really become a musician until I gave up the oboe, and I became an even better one after I gave up conducting. All the specialized preparation that goes into either of those activities was for me a decades-long distraction from the thing that I've really come to relish, which is making as deep a dive as I know how into music that's unfamiliar to me, trying to fill in some of the gaps in my knowledge. I'd toyed around with playing a couple of these movements in the distant past, and I also recall studying the C major and C minor fugues in an 18th century counterpoint class, but that's about the extent of my acquaintance with the Well-Tempered Clavier, other than for an occasional casual listening to the set. The thing about listening to this music is, if you're not carefully attending to it at all times, it tends to become a confusing polyphonic jumble that all washes together, and out of which a memorable tune occasionally rises. Not all that satisfactory an experience if approached that way, and leaving one wishing one had heard more melody or something. This is music for people who are not in a hurry, but who are prepared to spend some time and attention making some discoveries. Not only can it not be listened to by people who are in a hurry, it couldn't have been composed by anyone who matches that description. The care and skill that has gone into these little masterpieces just beggars belief. It's mostly on account of the fact that music like this exists, that I no longer even pretend to write music, even though I hold a master's in composition. That's enough autobiography for now. Let's have a look at this music pitched in F sharp, a tritone away from where I began this project 2 weeks ago. The F sharp major prelude is an amiable two-part invention, with the right hand's melody being one of the most syncopated you'll ever hear. You might find it interesting in that respect to compare it to that of the final movement of the same composer's Sixth Brandenburg Concerto. This is one of those preludes that's run its course not long after it begins, and the fugue that follows forthwith is a cheerful thing whose developmental passages are mostly occupied with a bright, chipper figure that shows up right after the fugal exposition. This is one of those short movements that can make one's day better just for having heard it. The F sharp minor works are considerably more serious, more ambitious in their aims, and more demanding of the listener's full attention. The minor key prelude plows ahead with furious energy in an ongoing contest between the two hands in rapid invertible contrapuntal exchange. This great release of musical vehemence already stands in high contrast to those bright movements that went before, and the fugue that follows is just magnificent. You may already have noticed a tendency in Bach's fugue writing for the minor key fugues to employ chromatically rich subjects. There are several ways this can be achieved, and the case at hand is one of the most unusual and interesting. What we have here is a slow, decorated climb up the minor scale from tonic to dominant, but as the line rises, brightening chromaticism slips in at a couple of stages and goads the music upward until it reaches the fifth degree, at which point it turns downward, sheds its chromatic burden, and comes to its cadence without further ado. It may well occur to you as you listen to the subject as given first in the piano's tenor range that this is a subject that just begs for treatment by inversion. And if that were to be the case, you will not be disappointed. The recording is by Tatiana Nikolayeva, and one of these days I'll learn to turn my phone off before starting one of these recordings.